Relax, my sister said, swirling her latte like it was champagne. You're not even dating anyone. She laughed. Not a soft laugh. The kind that lands on the table and stays there. Dad nodded, not looking at me. When you find someone serious, we'll help. No point letting money just sit. I remember the clink of the spoon against her cup. I remember how quiet I went. That money wasn't abstract. It wasn't symbolic. It was my wedding fund. The one I'd been adding to since I was 23. Extra shifts. Skip trips. A quiet promise to myself that when my day came I wouldn't have to beg. They used it to buy her boyfriend an engagement ring. For a second I couldn't breathe. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped something out and left the skin intact. I wanted to scream. Dad, I smiled. I even said congratulations. Hi everyone. My name is Elena Cross. And that was the moment I learned how easy it is for your family to spend your future while calling it practical. They told me it was temporary. That I was being dramatic. That I should be happy for my sister. Dad reminded me I was still young, like time was an apology. I nodded through all of it. I hugged her. I watched her flash the ring like proof I didn't matter. And when I went home that night, I opened my laptop and moved every remaining dollar into an account no one knew existed. I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I disappeared quietly. Months passed. Birthdays. Holidays. Engagement photos I double-tapped with a straight face. They thought I was waiting. They thought I was alone. 7 months later I wasn't. I eloped in Bali. No announcement. No family. Just white stone, ocean air, and a man who never asked me to shrink so he could shine. We held our reception in a private villa. Open terraces, lanterns, silk curtains moving with the wind. The total cost was $390,000. I posted the photos the morning after, barefoot in bed, still wearing my ring. By noon my phone started vibrating. Once. Twice. 16 missed calls. All from home. I turned the phone face down, listened to the waves outside, and realized something chillingly clear. They finally understood I had built a life they were never meant to control. The phone kept buzzing against the wooden nightstand, sharp and angry, like it was offended I wouldn't pick it up. I didn't. I lay there listening to the ocean breathe outside our villa, slow and steady, the opposite of my pulse. My husband's arm was warm across my waist. He was still asleep, unaware that my old life was trying to claw its way back in through missed calls and unread messages. 16 calls became 23. Then the text started. Call me now. Is this some kind of joke? Where did you get that money? Why wasn't your family there? That one made me laugh. Not out loud, just a quiet release in my chest. Because even now they weren't asking how I was. They were asking why they hadn't been invited to witness it. I finally sat up and scrolled back through my camera roll. The photos told a story I hadn't let myself fully absorb yet. Me in linen and bare feet, smiling without bracing for judgment. My husband's hand steady in mine. No eyes watching to measure my worth. Back home my sister was probably pacing. Dad was probably confused, maybe even angry. Not because I eloped, but because I did it without them. Because I did it well. I typed one message and deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. There was nothing to explain. No permission left to ask for. By afternoon my sister finally left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, rehearsed, pretending concern. Elena, we just want to understand, she said. You didn't have to do this alone. I listened once. Then I archived it. Because the truth was heavier than anything I could say. I didn't do it alone. I just stopped doing it with them. The calls slowed down by the third day. Not because they cared less, but because they were recalculating. That's how my family always worked. Emotion first when it benefited them. Strategy when it didn't. I finally checked my email that evening, sitting on the terrace while the sky melted into gold. There was a long message from Dad. Carefully written. Polite. Almost respectful. A tone he had never used with me before. He said he was proud. Said he wished he'd known sooner. Said families make mistakes. Then, buried in the middle like an afterthought, came the real reason. He mentioned the wedding fund. Not the theft, he called it a decision. Not the ring, he called it an investment in family happiness. He reminded me that technically the money had passed through his account. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Back home they were connecting dots that suddenly scared them. My quiet job. My calm demeanor. The fact that I never asked for help, not once, Even after they emptied the fund. They were realizing something dangerous. I had resources they didn't understand. I closed the laptop and watched my husband walk toward me carrying 2 glasses of wine. He sat beside me without asking questions. That was love, not curiosity, not control. Just presence. Later that night another message came. This one from my sister. She said she felt hurt. Said I should have told her I was doing well. Said it wasn't fair to make her feel small on her engagement year. I smiled at that. Because for the first time she felt exactly what I had carried for years. The shock of discovering the world doesn't stop to wait for you. They didn't apologize. They invited. A family dinner, Dad called it. Neutral territory. A chance to talk things through. He said my sister was emotional, that she missed me, that this didn't have to become something bigger than it already was. I almost declined. Almost. But there's a particular clarity that comes when you're no longer afraid of the room you once shrank in. So I agreed. The restaurant was expensive in a way meant to impress. Heavy chairs, low lighting, menus without prices. I arrived on time. They were already seated, stiff smiles in place like armor. My sister's ring caught the light immediately. She adjusted her hand until I noticed. So, she said, forcing cheer. Bali looks nice. Dad watched me carefully like he was waiting for a confession. I ordered calmly, took in the familiar tension and let them speak first. They talked about the wedding plans, the venue, the guest list. My sister complained about costs, about how everything was adding up so fast. Then Dad leaned forward. You know, he said gently, families help each other. You've clearly done well. There was not the apology, not the regret, the reach. I folded my napkin, met his eyes and felt something settle in me, a stillness I'd never had before. I agree, I said. Families do help each other. My sister smiled, relieved. They had no idea I wasn't agreeing with them. I was setting the stage. Silence followed my words, thick and expectant. They leaned back, waiting for the version of me that used to explain herself. The one who softened statements so no one else felt sharp. I didn't give them that. Dad cleared his throat. We were thinking, he said carefully, since you didn't have a traditional wedding, maybe some of that money could come back into the family. Your sister's ceremony is important. My sister nodded quickly. Too quickly. Just until after the wedding, she added. You know we'd pay you back. I looked at her ring again. The one bought with my future. I have a question, I said, keeping my voice light. When you used my wedding fund, did you plan on paying me back? Dad frowned. That's different. How? I asked. The word landed gently, but it split something open. He started talking, about responsibility, about timing, about how I wasn't even engaged back then. My sister jumped in, saying she needed the ring in the moment. That love couldn't wait. I listened. Really listened. Not to their excuses, but to the certainty underneath them. The belief that my life existed as a reserve they could draw from whenever they pleased. I set my glass down. I won't be contributing, I said. Not now. Not later. My sister's face fell. Elena, don't be selfish. That word used to ruin me. Now it clarified everything. I stood, placed cash on the table for my meal only and picked up my bag. I already helped, I said quietly. You just forgot to ask. As I walked out I felt it, not triumph, not anger. Relief. Behind me the table was still arguing. Ahead of me my life was no longer up for negotiation. I thought walking away would end it. It didn't. Within days I became the villain in a story I hadn't agreed to star in. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered my number. Messages came wrapped in concern but sharpened with judgment. Your sister is devastated. Your father is under so much stress. Money changes people, Elena. That one almost made me laugh. At a cousin's birthday dinner, one I wasn't invited to but heard about anyway, my sister cried into her hands and told everyone I had abandoned the family. She said I'd let success turn me cold. Dad backed her up, quietly, painfully, as if he were mourning someone I used to be. They never mentioned the fund. They never mentioned the ring. They never mentioned how easily they spent what I had built. I watched it all from a distance, scrolling through screenshots sent by well-meaning relatives who thought I should know what was being said about me. And I did know. I knew because this wasn't new, only louder. That night I sat on the balcony back home, City lights blinking like distant stars. My husband asked if I was okay. I told him the truth. "They're rewriting me," I said. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. I opened my laptop and pulled up the documents I'd kept for years. Bank statements. Transfers. Dates. Messages. Proof. Not for revenge but for truth. I realized then something important. They thought I was silent because I was ashamed. I was silent because I was patient. And patience, I had learned, is what makes the final moment land exactly where it should. I didn't confront them publicly. I didn't post receipts. I didn't defend myself in group chats or comment sections. I did something quieter. I sent one email. It went to Dad first, then my sister, then every relative who had suddenly developed an opinion about my character. Short subject line. No emotion in it. For clarity. Inside were attachments. Clean. Organized. Impossible to twist. The original wedding fund statements. My deposits highlighted over years. The withdrawal date circled in red. The transfer receipt that led directly to the jeweler. Screenshots of texts where I asked calmly what the money was used for, and their replies brushing me off. No accusations. No insults. Just facts. I didn't ask for repayment. I didn't demand an apology. I ended the email with one sentence. "I'm sharing this so the truth doesn't have to rely on memory." The responses came fast after that. Relatives who'd scolded me went silent. A few sent awkward apologies. Some tried to justify why they'd believed the version they were told. Dad called. I didn't answer. My sister texted, long messages this time. Not angry. Panicked. She said she felt exposed. Said I should have handled it privately. That was the irony. I had handled everything privately, until they made my silence public. That evening I stood by the window watching rain streak the glass and felt something loosen inside me. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Finality. They finally knew the truth. And for the first time they also knew something else. I wasn't asking for my place back. I had already moved on. The wedding happened without me. I saw the photos later. Filtered smiles, stiff poses. A ceremony that looked expensive but felt strangely empty. My sister wore the ring proudly, but something in her eyes had changed. Confidence replaced by vigilance. Like she was waiting for the ground to shift again. Dad never apologized. He sent one message instead. "I hope one day you understand why we did what we did." I read it once and realized something quietly powerful. I already did. They didn't do it out of love. They did it out of entitlement. An understanding that meant I no longer needed closure from them. Months passed. Life filled itself naturally. Mornings with no tension, dinners with laughter that didn't cost me dignity, a marriage built on shared ground instead of borrowed sacrifice. My husband never once asked me to make myself smaller so he could feel taller. One evening, as we sat planning a future that belonged only to us, my phone buzzed. A notification. My sister had removed me from the family group chat. I smiled. Because that was the final truth they gave me without realizing it. They didn't lose me when I eloped. They didn't lose me when I refused to pay again. They lost me the moment they treated my life like a spare account. And I didn't take anything back from them. Except my peace.